Last year, the world came together in Paris to reach an agreement to address the climate crisis. It was a historic moment, and it was just the beginning. Join us on our journey around the globe as we learn what it will take to build a healthy, clean energy future, and what more we all can do. We'll hear from the leaders, musicians, experts, and everyday people leading the fight to make climate action a reality. This is 24 hours of reality. We're on the road forward.
Hi, and welcome to our next hour. And if you're here with us now, you get something special. Take a look at that gorgeous, we're just getting that little bit of daylight over New York City from our vantage point here at Liberty State Park. Welcome, I'm Sam Champion, and thank you for joining us for 24 hours of reality, the road forward. Now, last year the world came together in Paris for something pretty special. COP21, 195 nations adopted an agreement committing to reducing greenhouse gases and limiting rising global temperatures. Now, that was history, no doubt, but that was only the beginning. Now comes the hard work of meeting those commitments. Travel with us from our home base right here at Liberty State Park as the daylight comes up. And we're founder and chairman of the Climate Reality Project and former Vice President of the United States, Al Gore. He will lead us around the globe as we visit the top 24 greenhouse gas emitting countries. We will explore solutions each nation has at hand. We'll talk about the challenges that they face, and we also may have a few ideas that will help them ensure success and a sustainable future. Now, we continue our look at the road forward with our 14th of 24 countries. Ladies and gentlemen, glad you're here for Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is the 15th highest greenhouse gas emitter. So, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by diversifying the nation's economy away from oil, in part through investments in renewable energy and energy efficiency. Now, earlier this year, the Deputy Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman Al Saud, announced a plan for moving Saudi Arabia beyond oil. So now, let's take a little moment and enjoy the man who makes all this possible. Please join me in welcoming the man who actually led the charge in educating and inspiring action on the climate crisis, the founder and chairman of Climate Reality Project, Vice President Al Gore.
Thank you again, Sam.
Welcome, sir. Got a little sunrise on us now.
It's a pleasure to look east, seeing the sun come up over Manhattan, round the clock here. Thank you again for helping us out here. Okay, so we're looking at the 24 top emitting nations, and together they're responsible, those 24 out of 195, together these 24 are responsible for more than 3/4 of all the global warming pollution in the world. So that's one of the reasons why we picked this. Here are the top 24, and now we're going to look at number 15, as Sam said, Saudi Arabia. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, of course, plays a very special role in the world's energy economy, and now is beginning to play a very special role in helping to provide momentum for the shift to renewable energy. That surprises some people, but it's actually the case, and we're going to show you in these 10 minutes here and throughout the hour some of the exciting developments. I want to start for our audience in Saudi Arabia with the images that I always start with, the iconic picture called Earthrise, the first picture humanity ever had of the Earth floating in space over the moon's horizon. And then 4 years later, the blue marble, the iconic image that helped to launch the modern version of the environmental movement. So this image of the atmosphere of the Earth is extremely important because it describes visually one of the central facts about the climate crisis. We have the misimpression that the sky is a limitless, vast expanse. When we look up at it, as the daylight comes, it seems like it goes on forever. But actually, as the astronauts' pictures show us, confirming what the scientists have always told us, it's a very thin shell of atmosphere around the planet with a shockingly small volume of air compared to what we think. And so when we put an additional 110 million tons of man-made global warming pollution spewed into it every day as if it's an open sewer, that amount really mounts up. Now the cumulative total traps as much extra heat energy in the Earth's atmosphere every day as would be released by the explosion of 400,000 Hiroshima-class atomic bombs going off every 24 hours. It's a big planet, but that is an enormous amount of energy. So where is this coming from? Well, the biggest single source, of course, is the CO2 emissions from the burning of fossil fuels. There are many other sources, agriculture, forestry, you can go down the list. But the real heart of the problem is our reliance on fossil fuels for 80% of the energy that the world uses. So if you look at this in historical perspective, you can see that the big increase started after World War II, and then in the late 80s it got even steeper, but now it's begun to crest, and this may be a real tipping point. I'm optimistic that it really is. Now, if you look at Saudi Arabia's greenhouse gas emissions, you know, Saudi Arabia is known as a major source of energy, but it's also becoming a very big consumer of energy, providing more jobs for a fast-growing population, using a huge amount of oil for desalination, natural gas for factory jobs. Anyway, the greenhouse emissions have been increasing. And actually, if you look at the latest statistics, Saudi Arabia is now subsidizing fossil fuel at the rate of almost 10% of its GDP. Not for me to suggest changes in policy, but this is an enormous amount of money, over $70 billion per year. And countries around the world are now aggressively reevaluating the practice of subsidizing fossil fuels. And so one can hope that Saudi Arabia will question that as well, partly because of the subsidies, but for a lot of other reasons as well. We see that the amount of emissions coming from the energy sector in Saudi Arabia is really enormous. And if you break that down, you can see that it comes largely from electricity and heat, manufacturing, construction, and transportation. There are efforts underway in all of these sectors of the economy to get more efficient. But of course, to pause here, the world as a whole has to address this and is addressing it because it's abundantly clear that the temperatures are rising to dangerous levels. 14 of the 15 hottest years ever measured have been since 2001, and the hottest of all has been this year. Even though the year's not over yet, it's already locked in as the hottest year ever measured in world history. So with instruments. So on a global basis, you see this incredible increase in temperatures since 1880 when the measurements with instruments began. And the increase projected in Saudi Arabia because of its geography, because of its place in the layout of the world, if you will, is expected to go up 5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century unless we have significant reductions in emissions. So Saudi Arabia has a big stake in helping the world solve this crisis that we share together. You know, I mentioned in a previous hour the respected Max Planck Institute in Germany has put out this shocking study that some areas of the Middle East, including the Arabian Peninsula, is now in danger of seeing many areas become literally uninhabitable. This is extremely troubling. And in Mecca, this study based on MIT's work shows that extreme heat waves, quote, beyond the limit of human survival could become normal in the Middle East if emissions are not significantly reduced. So what would it mean to have such a vast region where these holy sites are as well that would become uninhabitable? This is an illustration of how the climate crisis is pushing the boundaries of our moral imagination and also encouraging us to really rally to the challenge of reducing these emissions that are causing the crisis. So let's look at some of the consequences. I've talked before in previous hours about how this extra heat is distorting the water cycle and vastly increasing the amount of water vapor coming into the sky off the warmer oceans. And then it falls in very large rainfall events, while overall precipitation in regions like Saudi Arabia actually declines, but the precipitation that does come falls mostly in these one-time big storm events, or rain bombs, as many people are calling them. Here is a flood event in Saudi Arabia earlier this year, and a flood event in Riyadh late last year. These events are not rare now in the Middle East. And of course, desertification, we saw this in Iran also. The drier conditions and the warmer temperatures loosens the dust on the desert and increases not only desertification, but dust storms, which add to the problem of air pollution, which is very, very serious in Saudi Arabia, costing Saudi Arabia an estimated 4% of its annual GDP. Now, of course, the higher temperatures also increase the demand for water in agriculture, for plants and animals and people. And we're seeing water stress in Saudi Arabia, one of the most water-stressed regions in the entire world. And now almost half of all of the domestic oil consumption in Saudi Arabia is used for desalination. It's a very energy-intensive process, and since they're water-stressed and water-short and have a lot of oil, it's understandable why almost half of all their oil consumption is now devoted to desalination, but that may not be sustainable for very long, given the competing demands for oil for domestic energy use. Sea level rise is also a big threat. Almost 1 million people threatened by a 2-degree increase, and 2.5 million by a 4-degree Celsius increase. But here's the good news. Saudi Arabia actually was a constructive force and joined with the rest of the world in reaching the Paris Agreement. And those of us who've worked on the climate crisis feel a debt of thanks over the past year for Saudi Arabia's constructive approach to helping the world get on the move to solving this crisis. Saudi Arabia's commitments are significant. I won't go through every single one of them. You can read them for yourself. But it is a very encouraging set of commitments, and they know the solutions are at hand. And actually, if you look at what's happening in renewable energy in Saudi Arabia, they know the cost of solar is going down dramatically, and we're seeing this incredible solar resource in Saudi Arabia, one of the best solar resources of any nation in the world. And so we're seeing a dramatic expansion of solar. Here's an interesting fact. This little tiny area here is all that would be needed for solar cells to supply 100% of all of the energy that Saudi Arabia consumes each year. Quite dramatic. It could actually be done. We're now seeing plans to get 10% of energy from renewable sources just in the next several years. It is less than the original target, but I suspect that's going to be reevaluated. The 9,300 panels in this site are producing an enormous amount, more than 3 gigawatts. And solar is already going to be more economic than fossil fuels, according to the former oil minister, and it's rapidly becoming competitive. In fact, it already is. And within 20 years, Saudi Arabia is predicted to be an economy that really depends more on renewables than fossil fuels. We're seeing innovators like this inventor of solar umbrellas for the Hajj and lots of other new innovations. Saudi Arabia has already ratified the Paris Agreement. It could do more, of course. It could enhance its commitment. I suspect that it soon will. It needs to diversify its economy beyond petroleum, increase renewable, eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, and capture methane leaks. But for all of these reasons and more, the world can now say to Saudi Arabia, thank you for contributing to the world's effort to make a sustainable future a reality. Sam, back to you.
All right, sir. When you see what a small build out it takes of solar energy to produce all the energy you need for a nation that size.
Yeah, same is true in the U.S., by the way.
It makes you want to scream at your leaders to build solar. All right, thank you, Vice President Al Gore. All right, every hour we'll be sharing inspiring solutions that are already in place in each of our 24 countries that we'll visit. In Saudi Arabia, a significant budget shortfall due to declining oil prices and a growing need to diversify the economy has caused the nation to look toward an even more abundant resource than their oil, the sun.
Around the world, communities are embracing clean and healthy solutions to fight the climate crisis. With a global agreement now in place, the time for action is now.
هناك حوالي 7 بقع شمسية بالكرة الأرضية. المملكة عندها واحدة من البقع هذه. اسمي حسام إبراهيم خنكار، أول سعودي يتخرج هندسة علوم طاقة شمسية بكالوريوس، وصار لي في الحقل هذا مجال الطاقة الشمسية أكثر من 30 سنة. أنا شغال ماسك الخلايا الشمسية عالية التركيز، وبشتغل في مدينة الملك عبد العزيز للعلوم والتقنية.
أنشئت مدينة الملك عبد العزيز لتكون المختبرات الوطنية للمملكة العربية السعودية.
هذا المصنع تبع الخلايا الشمسية. أنا أعرفكم على المهندس سعد. السلام عليكم. الحمد لله كويس.
بدأت مدينة الملك عبد العزيز في عام 2010 ببناء أول مصنع لإنتاج وتجميع الألواح الشمسية. من أكبر التحديات التي تواجه مشاريع الطاقة الشمسية في المملكة هي الحرارة العالية والعواصف الرملية التي تسبب التصاق الغبار على سطح الألواح الشمسية.
المملكة تعتمد في اقتصادها على صادرات النفط، وهناك استخدام ضخم للنفط لتوليد الطاقة الكهربائية في داخل المملكة، والتي بدورها أيضا في ازدياد كبير.
ولا بد أنه النفط أو كلمة الطاقة الأحفورية لابد أن تنضب، فلا بد أن المملكة كان لابد من التحرر من ارتباطها الطاقات الأحفورية.
فإن الطاقة المتجددة تمثل خيار استراتيجي بالنسبة للمملكة في السنوات القادمة.
لابد من قبل أي مشروع للطاقة المتجددة بدك تعمل بايلوت بلانز لتشوف المعمل هذا للوثوقية، بحيث أنه نختبر أي خلايا شمسية نشوف مدى جودتها بحيث أنها تعيش لمدة 25 سنة. قديش معمل للغبار بحيث أنه نحاكي عدد العواصف الرملية فيها. نجي هنا بالنسبة للقوة، أيضا هنا الاختبارات المائية ويند لود.
في منطقة الأفلاج قامت المدينة مع الشركة السعودية للكهرباء بسعة 50 ميجاوات. المدينة الآن تقوم ببناء أول محطة في العالم في تحلية المياه بالطاقة الشمسية في مدينة الخفجي.
فالسوق السعودي هو سوق متعطش للطاقة هذه. أصبح مع الوضع الاقتصادي ومع الأسعار العالمية للنفط أصبح لابد من وضع تعرفة جديدة. إن شاء الله حتحظى بحذو جدا مهم أو كثير.
innovators are hard at work. We can make climate action a reality. Together, we're on the road forward.
All right, so we've learned a little about what Saudi Arabia is doing to fight the climate crisis, and now we want to hear from you. So tweet along with us at hashtag 24 Hours of Reality to join in on the conversation. You're very important in this conversation, and we'll be checking in with watch parties that are happening around the globe. If you're not having one yet, have a breakfast watch party. Call your friends over right now. If they're in the dorm down the hall, call them over. We'll put them on TV. We'll put them on. All right, the climate crisis affects every one of us, and the whole point is that we want to make sure that your voice is heard. So let's go now to actor and activist and our master of social media, Calum Worthy. Calum, I am going to go on Facebook Live right now as you do, what, a Periscope?
I am on Periscope right now, so I'm looking to the camera on live through the broadcast. I'm also looking live on Periscope at the exact same time. And I want to say I'm so grateful for all the people who are using the hashtag 24 Hours of Reality. You can be on Periscope, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Vine. I don't know if this has ever been done before. We have
I don't think
three
this has ever
different
been done
outlets
before, yeah.
broadcasting the same show at the exact same time, and I want to highlight some of these amazing posts that we've been getting. So this is Heather Wilkins tweeted a photo saying, "Jaden's my future, and that is why she is watching hashtag 24 Hours of Reality." That's a very powerful message. This is why we're doing this. We're doing this for the future generations of our world. I also want to check out, now he is, you know, this one's for all the ladies out there. This is a little eye candy for the climate movement.
This will bound to get some attention, no doubt.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
it is. You know, we also have another great one from Heather Wilkins. She says, "It is my job to try to pass this earth on to my grandson with water he can drink and food he can eat and have a safe place to live." A lot of powerful messages coming in, and please continue to send in posts with hashtag 24 Hours of Reality, and I will talk to you guys soon, and I will keep you guys updated ASAP.
All right.
See ya.
Calum, great job. So that was our first dueling
Facebook Live,
Facebook Live and Periscope Live and all that. So guys, I'm going to close this off on Facebook, and then you can join us at 24 Hours of Reality right now. Adel Abdelatif, I have been nervous about getting your name right all day long today.
You got it right anyway.
Thank you very much. I
morning.
appreciate it. Let's learn a little bit more. I mean, we're spending some time talking about these oil-rich nations that I guess the Western world would think that they may not be embracing sustainable energy because there's so much available to you of fossil fuels. So what's the plan to diversify? Is it important to the economy there, or is it a conversation?
Well, you have to understand that these countries have been depending on oil for the last 6 decades. And it was the source of their economic development. Without oil, these countries may not have been actually at the level of development that we see now. That's why there were kind of reluctance to go along with what it entails with climate change. But we see recently, since the last decade, a lot of emphasis on addressing this issue in many countries of the oil-producing countries in the Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. We have seen a lot of investment in clean energy and renewable energy in United Arab Emirates. And recently, Saudi Arabia ratified the Paris Agreement and also invested a lot in renewable energy. And also, the most important thing is establishing a scientific community from Saudis who actually are working very hard now to work on renewable energy and also clean energy.
Now, you mentioned a scientific community, and I think that all people like to hear from their own group of scientists, from their own batch. So is that happening now in Saudi Arabia?
Well, actually, in my work, I have been interacting with many people in this country and other countries in the Gulf region, and we have seen a lot of change in mindset, of course. The reluctance is how you diversify in the economy also during a financial crisis. And also the decrease in oil prices, of course, put a lot of pressure on these countries and its budgets. But there is a determination, of course, to address this issue because diversification of the economy is now a must. They cannot depend only on oil forever. And also they have to produce, opportunities outside the oil sector. The oil sector doesn't produce employment, produce very little employment. It is high. The intensity of technology in the oil sector is high, and that's why Saudi Arabia and other countries, they have to produce work on other industries that will produce employment, not necessarily using energy, But in tourism, for example, as in Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia, there is a lot of emphasis on other areas that will accommodate also the young people in this region. Demographic explosion in this region also is a very important factor that put a lot of pressure on leaders on how to find solutions and opportunities for the young women and men who are coming to the labor market.
So jobs are very important. It's a very important consideration when you're talking about turning a country around. Let's talk about the other challenges. Is it the fact that oil has been such a big part of your life, that it is an abundant resource? Or is it just that the conversation, the science hasn't really gotten there yet? What's the biggest challenge?
Well, you're talking about a region that has always been, with limited resources outside the oil sector. For example, you don't have water, right. You don't have, agriculture. Drought has been always an issue in these countries, not only in Saudi Arabia, but even if you go to the north, like Iraq and Syria, and it has been putting a lot of pressure on the resources of this region. The mindset is changing because people now, they realize that climate change is a fact. It is not something, that it might come once and go away. So it is something that we have to live with. In the last few years, as has been said before, the heat waves in the region actually are coming more frequently and affecting the people, affecting the old people, the young people, and it will actually inflict a lot of damage on many countries in this region, not only in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia are already a hyper-arid country. They depend on producing actually water from oil energy. So how also you shift from oil energy
right.
to solar energy to produce
the water that you need
that's
so
actually
desperately.
The biggest challenge in this region.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the conflicts. Here in the US and in many Western nations, they make headlines and they're on the news. So the conflicts in the Middle East, have you been able to pinpoint those to climate change in any way, or do we find that they are separate in all ways?
Now, in the last 2 decades or 3 decades, there are 2 major conflicts in the region that have been induced partly by climate change. Darfur in Sudan, it was, very clear. And also in the north of Syria, there was a drought in 2006.
Right.
Of course, that induced a lot of migration. And the problem is not actually with climate change per se, it is how governments are addressing these issues. So it is like a perfect storm, bad management, bad governance, and a phenomenon that is coming to this region. So when you see this marriage, of bad management of resources, a lot of countries in the last 3 or 4 decades have been pumping a lot of groundwater, looking, of course, for food security, but this, of course, is not sustainable. And when we think about, the issue of sustainability of solutions here, the science community and the scientific community is very important, to help in establishing this kind of solutions, because many countries thought that food security could be addressed only by, using the groundwater that is there. Saudi Arabia has been doing this. Syria has been doing this. Iraq has been doing this.
The United States has been doing it as well.
Yes,
yeah.
but you don't have the big economy that actually can sustain the poor people there. The level of development in the West and the industrialized countries can permit, the flexibility
sure.
to diversify. But these countries, are really on the edge, of between the desert and very limited, agricultural land.
That what you're saying really definitely is what many world leaders and military leaders have told me, that it's not necessarily the climate change, but it's the result. It's the need for food. It's the need for water that will drive communities from one community into another and create conflicts. And that's what you've kind of been seeing in some cases there. Let's move on to what the first step would be. So if we want to imagine a green and sustainable Saudi Arabia, how do we start that process?
Well, actually, the government recently has addressed this issue through 4 areas, the clean energy, technology, and renewable energy, and adaptation. And of course, adaptation is very important because you have to get the people behind any plan. When people, they understand that what are the challenges they are facing in the future, they will be supporting any sometimes drastic measures like oil subsidies. Oil subsidies, not only in Saudi Arabia, in all the Middle East and North Africa, has been a political tool in order, to get the support of the people. Of course, reducing oil subsidies will affect many people, and people will think that the government is, backing up of their commitments. I think, the most important thing, the more that you build awareness among the population, and particularly the young people, you will find, that in the next 4 or 5 decades, more young people coming to the scientific community, they will get more solutions, they will invest more in startups, and they will know how, to adapt in this very difficult climate. Adaptation in the Middle East and North Africa has always been, the name of continuity and survival. Right. And we don't want to see, that after 10,000 years, because the Fertile Crescent, in this region has been actually where agriculture has started in the world, domestication of plant, that what we see now, what we call agriculture, started there. We don't want to see under our eyes, the end of this kind of civilization.
Yeah, no one does.
Yeah.
And you can't do it alone. So what's the United Nations Development Program's role in helping Saudi Arabia and other nations in similar size and similar economic structure?
Well, there's several actually organizations in the UN working. You have the United Nations Environment Program. Our work actually is how we build awareness, how we also ensure that there is a scientific community and the capacity of the people themselves to produce solutions. You cannot depend all the time on the transfer of technology or getting experts from outside. Unless you have your own people that will be addressing all these issues, particularly at the local level. Communities, they feel the challenges of climate change before any scientist. And they can actually relay what they are feeling, what they are facing, and they have to be empowered and also to provide their own solutions. You will find that the management of water in this region has been actually in a very efficient way. If you go back maybe 200 or 300 years, people were aware about how to use water, how to manage groundwater, but unfortunately with technology, people have been abusing they are using more rationally than what we are using today.
Yeah.
And I think this kind of also traditional solutions, we have to go back and look at it and listen, how people maybe 100 years ago have been living in this harsh weather.
It sounds like to me that you're kind of banking on your young population and its education and its knowledge to make big differences in the country in the years ahead. How long do you think that'll take to get this new workforce in to where they can make decisions and they can understand the things that need to be done?
Well, we have, of course, to depend on the young people, not only because they are young, because they are 30% of the population.
Yeah.
I mean, the population between 15 and 29, they are 30%, and maybe in some countries more than that. And if you go below the 15 years of age, you have 60% of the population in this region is a young population.
A big population.
And that's why, it is a sector that has to be targeted and to invest in. And I think, people now with knowledge and with the social media, they know what is going on around the world. Young people are more aware than the older generation about the challenges of climate change. If you read, what they produce in Arabic, it is much more advanced, than the older generation. And if you see their tweets as well. And this actually is one of the positive things that we think, will help to carry, this region in the future. In the coming, maybe in 5 decades, this region will continue to have a young population. And I think the mindset has been changing. Yeah. A lot of people, they think, oil will not be there forever, and even it will continue to be a source of income. It should not be the only source of income, and they don't want to be labeled, like an oil economy. Yeah. This mindset, has been reflected actually in the Saudi Vision 2030.
Well, Adil, thank you so much for spending some time. Again, what helps us, I think, in a conversation like this is understanding a part of the world, seeing the differences and the similarities, a part of the world that we don't often get a chance to visit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
helping us understand
Thank you.
that. I appreciate it. Now I'm thrilled to present to you an exclusive aerial performance imagined by Cirque du Soleil in support of our marquee partners, One Drop. It's an international nonprofit dedicated to providing access to safe water. Now, this piece that you're about to see will be part of the 5th edition of One Night for One Drop. That's on March 3rd, 2017, and it's all happening in Las Vegas. But you don't have to go to Vegas right now, so please enjoy 24 Hours of Reality's exclusive premiere here, One Drop for Humankind.
We are one drop in an ocean of God, connected by our isolation, and our cells are our incarceration, and our boundaries are imaginary lines that divide us into separate nations when we're the same creation. We use technology to keep us in communication, and yet there's nothing better than a simple conversation. They say that it's the journey, not the destination. I say the journey is the destination. We're facing global climate changes. Forests are endangered while we're chasing paper, buying things to help distract us from our human nature. Luxury and compensation when our accomplishments are far beyond how much we're making. It's what we're making. The ripple effect. I throw a rock into a lake and know the water's rising, even if it's at the smallest rate, and as the level elevates, it escalates. Get 1 million people throwing rocks and you can see the change. Gandhi said to be the change, and he the change, so we the change, and honestly, we need to change. The time will never be the same. Even though we're different, we are all the same. He the same, and she the same, so we the same. How can I complain about the minor things when there are human beings dying just to find a simple drink, migrating miles for what's pouring out my kitchen sink? It forces me to sit and think. What is the missing link? You see, it's hard to comprehend, but we are all in sync, so we have a responsibility to act. Actually, this moment, in fact, is all you'll ever really have. And right beneath the haves and the have-nots are never-hads, and yet they smile brighter than the actors from these clever ads, telling us to spend $1,000 to get some trendy swag when we could take the same amount and end the suffering they have. There's no third world. There is only one world, one sky and one earth. One man is not an island, he's an endless universe, manifesting inner dreams. Anything is possible, as long as all of us believes anything is possible. As long as one of us believes anything is possible. At least that's what I believe.
The most important person we'll talk to during this 24 hours of climate reality is you. And you talking to us is the second most important conversation that will happen. So, Caleb, what's going on out there right now?
We are getting so many tweets in, and this is a 24-hour broadcast. And I gotta say, I am so grateful for everyone who has been sticking with us for actually most of the broadcast. I'm getting tweets from people saying, I've been watching for 6, 7, 8 hours of the broadcast, and that is amazing. I really, really appreciate it. Some of those may be coming from my parents, but still, I appreciate you as well. I also want to talk about something because we're also live on Periscope, and I just did a Periscope live from my account. Wow, Sam, you were doing a Facebook Live account. Yeah. And we're also, of course, streaming through Climate Reality broadcast as well. So I want to show you, this is where the Periscope was. You can check it out on my Twitter as well. I'm not going to play the whole video. It's too long, but you can check that out if you'd like. I got some great tweets from Japan commenting on the Periscope as well. I want to go to this. Now, this is it's a watch party. And I want to talk to you a little about the watch parties. It's been a couple hours since I brought that up. If you are someone that is having a watch party, if you're hosting a watch party, if you're at someone else's watch party, please send in pictures, send in videos. We are looking at all of that on social media. Remember, use the hashtag 24hoursofreality. Now, if you're just joining us, this is how it works. If you use Twitter, if you use Facebook, if you use Instagram, if you use Google+, Vine, Periscope, and use the hashtag 24hoursofreality, your post may end up on this screen. We also have a watch party happening in Bangladesh as well. So thank you so much. And that's actually the Climate Reality Bangladesh. We have this really fun selfie from Sarah. I actually saw another tweet from Sarah early on in the broadcast, so thank you so much for being such an amazing activist and continuing to tweet us. We got a great one from Courtney who says, hashtag 24hoursofreality on Periscope should be mandatory watching. I agree. In fact, if you were a student or if you were an educator and you were on your way to school this morning, please talk to your class about climate change and hashtag 24hoursofreality. And if you want to, take a picture of your class. If you're talking about it and the kids are really passionate about it, if your teacher's very passionate about it, send us a post using the hashtag 24hoursofreality. And Sam?
Yeah?
I will see you on Periscope very soon because as soon as I come back for the next one, I'll be Periscoping that one as well.
We'll do it again. I agree with you on this, that I think that colleges right now are a really important hit as everyone's getting up and getting ready for if you have early classes. Run down the hall, get everybody together, take a picture, show us that you're watching, make a Periscope, make a Facebook Live. We'll get right back to you. We'll talk to you because, again, this conversation that we all have with you is just as important as where we go around the world. We'll be right back.
The climate crisis has hit home with devastating effect, disrupting people's lives and livelihoods everywhere. The Climate Reality Project was created to catalyze every level of society, demanding action to address the crisis. To date, we have trained thousands of climate reality leaders worldwide to give updates of the iconic presentation originally given by Al Gore in An Inconvenient Truth, and to educate and enlist others in the cause. These individuals hail from diverse communities and are a front line of awareness and action on the issue. Our branch offices around the world help to build powerful citizen movements. Like in Brazil, where efforts helped to ensure leadership ratified the Paris Agreement amid national turmoil. We also work to give young people and local government a voice with our 100% Committed campaign. Like in Park City, Utah, a city which is pledged to go 100% renewable. Or Plymouth State University, where a student-led movement helped the university to commit to 100% renewables. The thousands involved are creating the next generation infrastructure to drive pro-climate policies at the local, state, and national levels. And finally, each year, the Climate Reality Project attracts millions of viewers and the world's attention to the climate crisis with 24 Hours of Reality, a global live-streamed event featuring celebrities, dignitaries, and musicians for 24 hours. Today, we stand at the precipice of a new moment. Action is necessary and possible with affordable, widespread solutions. Join us as we make ourselves heard, as we make sure our leaders take action, and as we make a bright and sustainable future our reality.
Dear world leaders,
we all know that the climate crisis is here.
We are all affected by it.
और अगर ये हमारे ऊपर होता तो
we would do something about it.
In fact, some of us already are.
In our communities,
in our businesses.
We are doing our part.
Now it's your turn.
As our leaders,
as the ones bestowed with power,
the power to represent the people.
Please listen.
Listen to the land.
Listen to the ocean.
Listen to the science.
Actually, we have some demands.
We demand that you protect what's left.
Stop using fossil fuels.
And when you do,
the world will be a better place instantly.
Together, we can make it a reality.
Okay, so there are people all over the world who have committed themselves to becoming messengers and actually even activists in the fight against our climate crisis. Now, some of these people have been personally trained by Vice President Al Gore and some of the world's leading scientists in order to become climate reality leaders. And in a moment, well, I'm going to tell you how you can join them. But first, well, let's talk to one of these leaders and find out what it's all about. In Saudi Arabia, let's join Hussein Abaza from Cairo to talk about it. So, Hussein, do you have us? I know we've had some interesting times trying to get connected to you, but can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay,
perfect.
Good. We've got a little bit of a delay, but if you could look up a little bit and make eye contact with the screen or with the camera, that would be great. And let's talk about your experience.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Let's talk about your experience. What was it like to go through the program with Al Gore?
Well, it was really an interesting program and really an eye-opener to attend one of those training sessions sponsored by the Climate Reality Project. I think it was at that time held in Turkey, and it was one of those very well-attended training sessions. And it was a sort of a continuation, really, of the interest I did have on the environment and on climate change in general.
Now, first of all, I'm looking at a gorgeous day behind you in Cairo. So that to me is just an amazing shot to see you sitting there talking with us halfway around the world. But now, in conversations before, you've talked about the importance to get sustainable development. One of the key components is bridging all socioeconomic levels. So you mean all levels of employment, all levels from poverty to the most wealthy. Explain a little bit more about that idea.
Yeah, sure. You know, my experience with Saudi Arabia has been that, I worked in Saudi Arabia for some 6 or 7 years even, and that was through a project with the United Nations Physical Planning Project initially, and in 1973. And at that time, the oil prices were very low. I mean, it was almost $3 per barrel as compared to the hike in prices in 2016, where it dropped again now. But of course, in 2008, it reached around $150 a barrel almost. So my experience has been that a country like Saudi Arabia was increasing oil prices at that time, and since '73, that meant a lot of money pouring in the country, and it provided a huge potential for the country to really invest in more sustainable development projects. But at that time, with the oil prices at that level, even falling below the price of water, as people would like to say at that time, it wasn't that much, a pressing issue at that time. And one would wonder, I mean, myself, I did wonder, how can we trigger the interest, not just of policy and decision makers, but also of the general public in making a transition to a more sustainable sort of path at that time. But my involvement later on was more when I joined the United Nations Environment Program, and this is where we tried to see how we can trigger this kind of interest, because it's not just addressing climate change issues or environmental issues in general, but investing really in the environment itself provides a lot of opportunities in terms of opening up new economic, let's say, activities, venues for investing in more sustainable sectors like renewable sources of energy, like renewable water resources, production of biogas from waste, and so many opportunities. Transition to a sort of more sustainable path does offer. And in doing this, in a country like not just Saudi Arabia, but also the Gulf countries in general, and even other countries, it does, of course, diversify the economy, as we said, and especially in a country like Saudi Arabia and Gulf states, investing so much in or relying so much on one source of economic sector as the main source of income.
Yeah, it's not smart
really
for a nation,
sustainable.
Right? Exactly.
So,
Hussein, can I interrupt you for a second? I just want to ask you. I want to get to the conversation about business.
Not really, but
I want to ask you a question about business. We've talked a little bit about people getting involved, but how important would it be for the business climate, for businesses to actually get involved?
Absolutely. I mean, this is because I mean, investing in the environment, or investing in that. When I say environment, we're talking about, as I mentioned, the solar energy, and we're talking about water resources and other sectors, environmental sectors. This is really good business, and this is what we're trying to say here, that investing in the environment is not, or should not be seen as only as an obligation, or not an obligation at all. It's really an opportunity, because as far as the business is concerned, I mean, it's good business, because first of all, you use your resources in the most efficient way, you reduce waste, and you're more efficient, and hence you're more competitive. You can access more markets with whatever you produce. So it's really good business in moving into environmental investments. And from the public point of view, or from the government point of view, as we were saying, it creates new jobs, or more jobs as well, and more sustainable jobs, because I mean, whether we like it or not, oil is going to be depleted one day or another. So countries, and I think most of the countries in the Gulf states, and especially Saudi Arabia, they have realized the importance of shifting to investments in renewable energy, into efficient sources of processes that uses energy in a more efficient way. And that covers most of the sectors, really, not just household sectors, but transport, industry. And it's really very encouraging to see a country like Saudi Arabia.
Like Saudi Arabia, exactly.
That has historically depended Yes, like Saudi Arabia has depended mainly on fossil fuel as the main source of income, shifting into other sources of energy yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
I appreciate it. I just thank you for talking a little bit. Can you hear me now? I thank you for spending some time to talk with us a little bit about Saudi Arabia so that we'll better understand, and spending your time from Cairo with us today. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. So Hussein Abaza is one of those climate reality leaders. So for those of you watching who feel inspired, you want to be as smart about the topics as this gentleman was, you can help educate your own community about the climate crisis. Now is your chance. You can sign up right now and become a climate reality leader yourself.
Climate change is our biggest challenge yet. The world's getting warmer, seas are rising, and our weather is getting more and more dangerous. We've got to stop. The good news is that we can. And all across the planet, climate reality leaders are leading the fight. They are inspiring people to stand up and take action when it matters. You can join them. Become a climate reality leader and learn what it means to lead a world-changing movement. You'll train with former Vice President Al Gore and some of the best scientists and influencers out there. You'll learn the latest on climate science and solutions, and learn how to share it with a message that moves audiences to act. You want to make a difference? Now learn how. Become the world changer you know you can be. Become a climate reality leader.
This was a special hour. We got the sunlight back. So over the last hour, we've spent some time getting to know some of the unique challenges faced by the people of Saudi Arabia and their commitment to working toward a more sustainable future. And remember, the most powerful warrior in that fight against the climate crisis, it's you at home. That's the reason we're spending time doing all of this, is for you. Become a climate activist today by making your voice heard. It begins with letting your leaders know, your local leaders, your national leaders, where you stand on the climate crisis. And we're making it very easy for you to do just that. Just go over to 24hoursofclimatereality.org and choose the message that you want to tweet your leaders. Now, once you do that, we'll send you an action toolkit full of the resources, solutions, and ways that you can stay involved in this idea long after this program, 24 Hours of Reality, is over for the year. So stand up, be a trailblazer in your community, and together we can and we will continue this road forward.
The climate crisis has hit home with devastating effect, disrupting people's lives and livelihoods everywhere. The Climate Reality Project was created to catalyze every level of society, demanding action to address the crisis. To date, we have trained thousands of climate reality leaders worldwide to give updates of the iconic presentation originally given by Al Gore in An Inconvenient Truth, and to educate and enlist others in the cause. These individuals hail from diverse communities and are a front line of awareness and action on the issue. Our branch offices around the world help to build powerful citizen movements. Like in Brazil, where efforts helped to ensure leadership ratified the Paris Agreement amid national turmoil. We also work to give young people and local government a voice with our 100% Committed campaign. Like in Park City, Utah, a city which is pledged to go 100% renewable. Or Plymouth State University, where a student-led movement helped the university to commit to 100% renewables. The thousands involved are creating the next generation infrastructure to drive pro-climate policies at the local, state, and national levels. And finally, each year, the Climate Reality Project attracts millions of viewers and the world's attention to the climate crisis with 24 Hours of Reality, a global live-streamed event featuring celebrities, dignitaries, and musicians for 24 hours. Today, we stand at the precipice of a new moment. Action is necessary and possible with affordable, widespread solutions. Join us as we make ourselves heard, as we make sure our leaders take action, and as we make a bright and sustainable future our reality.